Hey everyone, it's me Gabe. I'm back again for another video. Today we're going to talk about how to overcome our fears and live in faith. We're all afraid of something, whether rational or irrational. We have fears that take a hold of us. Some of them might not have much effect on our lives, like my fear of falling from high places. As long as I can stay safe and avoid roller coasters, much to the dismay of my wife, I will be fine. But some of our fears can really get in the way of our life. Fear of looking bad in front of others can keep us from being ourselves and can make us lose track of our identity. Fears of the future can keep us from taking risks that might benefit us and make us stay with the status quo. Whether they are rational or irrational, fears can hold us back from achieving our potential. The reality is, many of our fears have no truth behind them. They're stopping us because of what we think might happen. They're stopping us because of what we think might happen, but really, it's probably not going to. I know this all too well. I'm a thinker and I tend to devise doomsday scenarios for the smallest mistakes or the smallest fears in my life. That's what fear does. It takes a hold of our lives. It takes a hold of our minds, our thoughts, our everything, and it limits us. For instance, my biggest fear is that I'll never be good enough for God to use me to help people. This has kept me from doing a lot of things that I've really wanted to do. For instance, starting this YouTube channel, as well as writing. For years, I wanted to write a book, and I kept telling people around me that I was going to write a book, and I was going to write a book, to the point where people are constantly asking me about when my book is coming out, but I didn't have it, or I didn't have an answer for them. This was because I was afraid that nobody was going to read it, nobody was going to like it, or that it wouldn't accomplish what I wanted it to accomplish. But to get to the point where I actually started writing it and actually getting to the point of finishing it so I can be ready to release it, more on that later, I had to be able to overcome my fears and trust God and live in faith. Today I'm going to talk about 4 ways that we can combat fear in our lives and trust God so that we can live in faith. Number 1, we have to fight fear by facing the truth. The truth is so important in our lives when it comes to facing fear, because fear likes to lie to us. It will tell us so many lies about who we are, about what God thinks about us, and eventually we will begin to lie to ourselves because we will begin to believe the lies that fear is telling us. So in order to get past our fears, we have to be able to confront fear with truth. One of my favorite examples of this is David and Goliath in 1 Samuel chapter 17. David was in a situation where everyone was afraid of Goliath. And we don't know if David was afraid of Goliath, but chances are he took a look at him and had a little bit of apprehension about the fight. But David didn't let that stop him. Instead, he confronted Goliath, who was standing against the people of God, and told him in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 45, "You come at me with spear and sword and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord our God, the armies of Israel." But in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 45, David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." Even if David was afraid and all the fear that was surrounding him, he was able to confront it and take it down by facing it head on and telling fear the truth. You think you're a big shot, but my God is bigger than you. The second way we can combat fear is to erase negative thinking. Negative thinking feeds fear. Like I mentioned before, we tend to design doomsday scenarios, end of the world scenarios about little mistakes or little things or little fears in our lives. One small bad thing can lead to the end of the human race. But what we need to realize is this is just speculative thinking. We end up creating worse fears and worse scenarios that will never happen. But this is what happens when we allow fear to control our thinking. It takes us to a place of anxiety and worry and doubt. But the Bible tells us in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, that we need to change that. It says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." We can overcome negative thinking by starving our fear. We can overcome our fears by starving it, by changing our negative thinking to positive thinking. thinking on good things, thinking on things that God has done for us, God has done for others, and all the blessings that we have in our life will remind our fears that there are more good things in life than there are bad. Thirdly, we have to allow for change in our lives. At first glance, this might not make too much sense, but change is so important to overcoming and conquering our fears because fear wants to keep us the same. That way it's easy to control us because it knows exactly what our patterns and habits and everything are. So if it keeps us in the same space, it's easy for fear to win. But if we allow for change in our lives, then we allow ourselves to grow. We allow ourselves to trust God more. We allow ourselves to become better people. In Joshua chapter 1, Joshua is going through the loss of Moses, as is the rest of the nation of Israel. And God tells Joshua, "Moses, my servant, is dead." And of course, God's not doing this just to be mean. Obviously, Joshua knows this. Moses was his mentor, his father figure, someone he looked up to, and now it fell on him to be able to lead the people of Israel. And most likely, Joshua was afraid. But in verse 9, he tells Joshua, "Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged." And that's a hard thing for him to hear because, of course, Joshua's probably afraid. Of course, he is going through feelings of fear and doubt. But God is telling him this not for him to be mean or to be more afraid, but to tell him, "Joshua, I know things are different. I know things are changing, but I am going to be with you through it all." But when we allow for change, we allow God to lead us and we allow us to trust Him. And this allows us to overcome our fears because it allows us to be in a place of growth where we can learn how to confront our fears even better every day. And finally, we need to remember what God has done for us. Humans are very forgetful beings. It's easy for us to forget what's going on in the world when we can't even remember where we put our phone or our keys. We're bombarded with information all of the time, and so it's easy to forget. So easy, in fact, that the people of Israel in the Bible had a forgetting problem all the time. The Bible tells us in the book of Judges that they constantly forgot what God had done for them. But remembering what God had done for us grows our faith and our trust in God. We need to keep a record of the miracles we've seen, the encouragement we received, and the things that God has done for us so that we can go back to it. In Psalm 77, verse 11, the psalmist writes, "I remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago." God wants us to remember, and fear wants us to forget. Because when we forget, fear wins. Because it is bigger in that moment than anything we're facing because we don't know. We don't know what's happened before. But when we remember, we're able to remind fear of its place and tell it, "You know what? God has helped me go through worse situations than this, and I don't need to be afraid anymore." I hope that these 4 tools can help you overcome your fear and help you live in faith. I hope these tools will help you overcome your fear and help you live in faith. But you have to remember, it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. And every time we face a fear, we have to go through these. We have to be able to apply them and every time we face a new fear, we have to be able to apply these because we will just fall into the trap of being held captive by fear again. But God is so much bigger than our fears, and He wants us to be able to live out our lives to the fullest But God is so much bigger than our fears, and He wants us to live out our lives to the fullest. So He wants us to trust in Him and remember that no matter what comes our way, He is going to be there with us. Thanks for watching today. I hope that you liked the video, and if you did, leave a thumbs up and share it on Instagram and Twitter, and don't forget to subscribe for more content. Leave a comment below sharing a story of how God has helped you overcome fear. Or if you're facing something right now, leave a comment below telling me how I can pray for you. So I hope to see you next time. Bye.